Hi everyone, thank you very much for checking out this presentation. This research is about a randomized monetization method in video games, commonly known as loot boxes. Loot boxes have been identified as being psychologically akin to gambling, and previous research has also linked loot boxes with problem gambling. The regulation of loot boxes is a public health issue that is being scrutinized by regulators and policymakers around the world, including in Australia. Indeed, two parliamentary committees have separately examined loot boxes. The more recent report of the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Social Policy and Legal Affairs recommended that the Australian government should restrict access to loot boxes to adults aged 18 years or over. This recommendation is similar to gambling restrictions which prevent children from accessing gambling activities and which thereby protect them from potential harms. Other countries have taken different regulatory approaches to loot boxes. Belgium has effectively banned loot boxes, whilst the UK has adopted a wait-and-watch approach and has not yet regulated loot boxes. Our research contributes to this global public policy issue with our unique contributions. Our research provides a non-Western perspective to the loot box literature, which has so far been preoccupied with the situation in Western countries. The People's Republic of China regulates loot boxes by requiring video game companies to disclose the probabilities of obtaining randomized loot box rewards. This disclosure-based consumer protection measure is also being pushed by the video game industry as a self-regulatory solution to loot box harms. Research in other domains, such as alcohol, tobacco, and gambling, suggests that companies may not disclose information in an optimal manner to consumers. For example, UK alcohol companies have not always met their voluntary pledges around health warnings, and gambling companies' disclosures about the odds of winning are often communicated suboptimally. This is relevant because Chinese loot box disclosure policies provide significant discretion to game companies. Disclosures made in-game on the loot box's purchase page or on the game's official website are compliant with the law. There are also no requirements as to how prominently displayed and accessible disclosure regulations in China ought to be. We do not know how effectively game companies have complied with disclosure regulations in China and whether or not they are behaving in a socially responsible way. Our research assesses the prevalence of loot boxes in video games in China and the video game companies' interpretations of probability disclosure regulations in China. We found that 91 of the 100 highest grossing iPhone games in China contained loot boxes. This is significantly higher than the 62% found in a recent Australian study. We also found that 90.5% of games deemed suitable for children aged 12 and above contained loot boxes, as shown in Table 1. This is significantly higher than the 58.9% found in a recent UK study. Our results reflect that the loot box situation in different countries might be vastly different and therefore should be studied separately. In terms of probability disclosures, as shown in Table 2, we found that 4.4% of the 91 highest grossing iPhone games containing loot boxes in China did not disclose probabilities despite being required to do so by Chinese law. We found that 23.1% of games disclosed probabilities only in-game on the loot box's purchase page, and that 38.5% of games disclosed only on the game's official website. Website disclosures, which require players to expend effort to find, are less accessible than in-game disclosures. However, it appears that video game companies prefer website disclosures. We found that only 34.1% of games disclose at both locations, even though disclosing at both locations is evidently better than disclosing only at one location. Game companies therefore fail to maximize consumer protection. Having found the relevant probability disclosures, we decided to assess how accessible these disclosures were. We found various forms of in-game and website disclosures as shown in Tables 3 and 4. The most accessible and prominent in-game disclosure format is automatically displaying the probabilities on the loot box purchase screen, as shown in Figure 1. In contrast, the least accessible and most hidden in-game disclosures can be accessed only by chatting with the in-game customer service bot, as shown in Figure 3. The most accessible and prominent website disclosure format is hyperlinking the disclosure at the bottom of every page of the website, as shown in Figure 5. In contrast, disclosures made on separate web pages for different loot boxes were less accessible, as shown in Figure 4. Overall, we found that only 9.6% of in-game disclosures were automatically displayed, and only 13.6% of website disclosures could be considered reasonably prominent. In conclusion, we found that loot boxes appear to be even more prevalent in video games in China than in Australia or the UK. We also found that most video game companies fail to disclose probabilities reasonably prominently. Our recommendation is that legal regulation and/or self-regulation of loot boxes through probability disclosures should require specific, uniform, and prominent disclosures to ensure maximum consumer protection. This research was conducted remotely by a team of researchers based in 3 countries, China, the UK, and Australia. We actually found working across time zones to be particularly efficient and not burdensome at all. Thank you again for listening in. Please take care.